New York City police raided Hamilton Hall using what looked to be wearing military type gear. They even brought an armored vehicle to enter through a window into the building, which is on campus. Students had taken over the building after the university ordered them to disperse from an encampment that they had set up on the lawn in front of the library, and had issued suspensions. Then after the suspensions were issued that same night, a smaller group of protesters went from the encampment and broke into the building and then began to occupy the building, barricading themselves inside.
After hours of confrontation between police in riot gear and pro-Palestinian protesters at the University of California, it looks like the scene is under control. Just in the last hour, President Biden had this statement for the nation.
We're a civil society, and order must prevail. Throughout our history, we've often faced moments like this because we are a big, diverse, free-thinking, and freedom-loving nation. In moments like this, there are always those who rush in to score political points. But this isn't a moment for politics. It's a moment for clarity. So let me be clear. Peaceful protest in America. Violent protest is not protected. Peaceful protest is. It's against the law when violence occurs. Destroying property is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest. Threatening people, intimidating people, instilling fear in people is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Dissent is essential to democracy, but dissent must never lead to disorder or to denying the rights of others so students can finish the semester and their college education. Look, it's basically a matter of fairness. It's a matter of what's right. There's the right to protest, but not the right to cause chaos.
So Joe Biden. Now in Los Angeles, we saw on the news channels rolling pictures of officers ripping apart barricades as demonstrators held up umbrellas like shields. Well, this law student, Taylor, says police set off flashbangs. That's an explosive device designed to disorient people around the camp.
It looks like these explosive fire sticks, I think, that are designed just to strike fear. It doesn't seem like they're hitting anybody, but they're extraordinarily loud and extraordinarily bright, and they were using that to basically push all of the supporters for the encampment to a different part of campus. So I don't know why they needed to do that, but I noticed that they arrested quite a few students while they're doing it.
Well, it's now 9 a.m. in LA, so let's cross live to the West Coast correspondent of the Times, Kieran Southern. Hello, Kieran.
Good evening, John.
Hello, Kieran. Can you just get us up to date with what's happening now, where you are, and in these other sites where we've seen these demos and confrontations?
Yeah, I am on the main campus of UCLA, just outside Royce Hall, which is a beautiful twin-towered Romanesque building that is the sort of symbol of UCLA, and this is where the main encampment was situated. We've just heard the trouble that occurred last night as the police cleared that encampment. By about 6 a.m. there was over 100 demonstrators lined up on the grass here with their hands behind their backs in zip ties. They were then led off to law enforcement buses and taken to local jails where they were either cited and released or booked into that jail. It then appeared, we were then the waiting press, we were allowed into what remained of the encampment, lots of tents, face masks, gas masks, iPhone chargers, food, sanitary products and stuff like that. It then appeared that there might be further trouble. There were riot police lined up against a group of about 50 demonstrators who had stayed throughout the night. Now, there was a dispersal order in place from last night, so they were technically in breach of that, but then at about 7:30 or so, the police left and the mood de-escalated quite significantly, and now we're just in the clean-up operation. You may be able to hear saws in the background as the barricades are being taken apart and put into pickup trucks.
Right, so it is much calmer than it was just a few hours ago. Those confrontations, those demos, the flashbangs, the fireworks thrown by some of the protesters, that was going on for hours, wasn't it? I mean, what's the feeling there now? Does this seem like a temporary calm, or is it going to continue? Is that the expectation?
Well, that's the the big question of whether the protesters are going to come back. I tried to speak to the demonstrators who remained earlier, but they were insistent they weren't going to speak to the press. A couple of them looked like they were going to speak to us, but then they were shouted down by the colleagues. But this is a growing crisis for the university, whose handling has been widely criticised from basically all corners. I was here on Tuesday and it was really peaceful, but then it blew up on Tuesday night when counter protesters arrived, and then obviously we had the trouble on Wednesday night. So I think the university and the local police are just going to be desperate now for calm to continue.
All right, Kieran Southern in Los Angeles, thank you so much for getting us up to speed with what's been happening there. Of course, it's not just about LA. There have been scenes at a number of campuses around America, and on the East Coast at New York's Columbia University. Well, a great deal was happening there over the last 36 hours or so. Let's talk live to journalist Katie Smith in New York. Hello, Katie.
Hello.
Hi. So, what has been happening there, Katie? Now.
So on Tuesday, New York City police raided Hamilton Hall using what looked to be wearing military type gear. They even brought an armored vehicle to enter through a window into the building, which is on campus. Students had taken over the building after the university ordered them to disperse from an encampment that they had set up on the lawn in front of the library, and had issued suspensions. Then after the suspensions were issued that same night, a smaller group of protesters went from the encampment and broke into the building and then began to occupy the building, barricading themselves inside. And then obviously the university authorized the police to come in and get out the protesters, arrest them. And now, as a result of the occupation of the building and the encampments which were going on campus, now there is a permanent NYPD presence through May 17th at Columbia, which is until after graduation. So there are police posted around campus, ostensibly to prevent another occupation or encampment from popping up again.
Yeah, it's worth reflecting, Katie, on what's been the context of what is going on here. Just step back a moment. These are the worst disturbances, protests on campus since the late 1960s. And we're talking about young Americans here who are now, well, they are young Americans of many faiths, many ethnicities, who in so many cases identify with Palestinians in this.
Yes, definitely. And that was central to the demands that not only students at Columbia, but students on campuses across New York City and the country have been making, which is to call attention to the situation in Palestine and to order universities to divest from Israel and disclose their investments with Israel. And that's been a central demand of most all student protests, in addition to requests for amnesty for students who were penalized for participating in protests on campus in the prior months.
We've heard now from President Biden, haven't we? And, well, this is one of those defining moments in America, the war in Gaza, dividing society and looks like becoming a significant issue in the coming presidential election too. This is an important demographic when it comes to the votes that are cast in November. Hello, Katie.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that there has been a huge pushback. One of the chants that has been frequently circulating during these protests over the past few months, not just on campus, but across New York City, has been F Joe Biden. So there's definitely been an outcry from a lot of protesters, especially now that in a lot of these states where most of the militarized police response has occurred have been states run by Democratic governors, Democratic state senators, Democratic U.S. senators and representatives. So there's definitely been this feeling among students and people sympathetic to Palestine that it doesn't really matter whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. It seems that from both sides, protesters are being maligned and they're being attacked, and they're having police sent to shut down their demonstrations by the Democrats. So I think that there is this frustration that's definitely growing and a sense of confusion among a lot of people about, okay, I mean, maybe we don't want President Trump, but we don't want Biden either. So there's this frustration that there's not another candidate that could be feasible, that would be able to perhaps solve these issues.
A lot of these young people may just turn their back on the political process altogether, which could have an effect in itself. Katie Smith, good to talk to you. Thank you. That's Katie Smith in New York.